I have Coach Damin Altizer here, and we're going to do a really interesting podcast. So, I scrolled through Coach Altizer's tweets, and I'm a huge fan of his on Twitter. And I wanted to read some of them off so the audience, so you can listen to them if you haven't seen them before and see how impactful, how authoritative they are. And to be frank, it might step on some of you guys' toes in a good way. So, Coach, are you ready for this?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on again, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, sir. Now, some of these are not as I don't say confrontational, but or polar, but some of them are interesting to me. So the first one is you don't stop KD, you don't slow down KD. He just sometimes misses shots. Best scorer the league's ever seen.
Yeah, so obviously, I think that one was back during the finals, and probably one of the games when he was unbelievable. And I think it's kind of a misnomer that you can stop players like defense absolutely beats good defense in basketball. And with somebody like KD, I mean, he gets to his spots. He just happens to miss shots, and obviously you can make it more difficult. You can do everything you can scouting report wise to try to get him to spots where maybe he's not quite as effective. But even when he gets to spots where he might not shoot as high a percentage, he's still elevating above. He misses shots. And again, that's a tweet that is kind of all encompassing. Where of course you're going to try to do things to slow him down. But with somebody like that, they're missing shots more so than somebody's stopping them with the great scores. Him, Kobe, Jordan. Rare. I'd say there's never a time when he gets put into a position where he doesn't think he's going to make a shot. And for me, he's absolutely in that level of one of the top 5 scorers of all time with his length, his ability to make tough shots, to get to the rim and finish. And he's incredible. That's all there is to it.
Got it. Skill and athleticism will both fade. Maximize them, but be defined by things that last.
Yeah, so very simply with that, your experiences those are the things that really define you and that you'll have forever. Your skill level, skill is going to outlast athleticism, obviously, but even your skill is going to someday fade because that is dependent somewhat on your athleticism. Look at Kobe when he got to the end of his career. Obviously, he was still extremely skilled, but he couldn't get to spots quite as well as he could before. He wasn't able to do it. He wasn't able to sustain it throughout an entire game like when he was younger. Um, and those things fade. But as a basketball player, obviously your locker room time, wins, championships, things like that, those experiences last forever. Those are the things that you truly own. And in my belief is that you own things that endure, and skill and athleticism aren't things that should define you because they can't endure. And as cliche as it is, father time catches up with everybody, and those things will fade. But while you may have an experience that was 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, that experience will always be there. And if you're defined by those things, I think it kind of leads to you having lifelong happiness as opposed to temporary if it's based on things that are one day going to be gone.
So I like this one. You'll never really lose when you're fighting the good fight.
I think, obviously, Myson, you and I are both in the same industry. And kind of with today, with everything that's come out with the FBI investigations and all those different things, it's very easy to get caught up in who knows what you're doing, who sees you doing things. But I think we're very much on the same page as far as serving players. If you're serving players, or if you're serving coaches, depending on what your role may be, if you are truly invested in helping them get to the next level, whatever that next level may be, whether it's high school to college, or if that next level means you're with a young player who can't make a left-handed layup and their next level is making the left-handed layup. If you're truly fighting that good fight and investing in them, even if they don't achieve that next level, you and the player are both going to win because you've invested all of your everything in achieving that goal.
Got it. Oh, talking cool won't get you nearly as far as talking smartly. Neither of those will get you as far as actually being intelligent.
And I think with that one, man, you did look back with some of these. uh, but I think it's very easy. And again, this is speaking to our industry to either one, try to appear intelligent. Can you still hear me?
I can definitely. And
Um,
my big question once you finish was, what's the difference with smartly, intelligently? Your
gotcha.
difference.
Yeah, so I think it's one thing to try to talk cool and fit in with kids, and especially if we're working with those grassroots level players, to speak in a way that we know we will fit in with them. But we have to maintain a professionalism in that. It doesn't mean that we're not friends with those guys, but there's no need for us to speak down or forget that we can impact these players beyond just on the basketball court, be that in their communities or in their classrooms. And part of impacting is going beyond basketball and kind of instilling in them that intelligence, that maturity. And oftentimes, I think even as adults, we can get so caught up in trying to fit in with these grassroots players and be buddies with them that we forget that aspect. And then kind of going deeper into the tweet at the same time, be who you are. And that's what they're saying, be intelligent. Don't just try to seem intelligent or speak smartly. Be who you are and let that intelligence shine through. We all have our different versions of, we have our own gifts, we have our different versions of intelligence. But if we're true to ourselves, then we can impart that intelligence into young players. And kind of going back to your previous question, then whatever the goal is, we're going to help them get closer to that, all the while impacting them on the court and just as importantly off of it.
So, what is your definition of grassroots? I have a certain picture that comes to mind when I hear that word, but what's your definition?
Oh, and I think of grassroots, I think pretty much players who are 12 to 18. I think with AAU basketball, a lot of times they say grassroots circuit. So for some, I know their definition is your 14 to 17U, shoe circuit grassroots teams. When I speak, at least when it comes to player development, about grassroots players and their development, I'm kind of thinking middle school on through. Some may have a definition where it includes players even younger than that. But at least for me, in my personal view, it's kind of any player in that middle school all the way on through who are, who you're working with and trying to, try to help them achieve whatever their goals may be.
All right, so I'm going to skip one and ask this one. Criteria for calling oneself an elite skills trainer. Have Twitter, IG, and Snap. The end.
We kind of hit on this one last time. It's a blessing and a curse that anybody can jump on and say that they're an elite skills trainer. I don't know what the definition is, but I know it's very easy to become one whenever you want. And in my opinion, that's not necessarily a great thing. And there are some guys who they decide they want to get into skill training, and their first step is, hey, I'm going to reach out, I'm going to network, I'm going to try to learn as much as I possibly can. And then some guys, they want to, immediately go make videos and hashtags and try to generate a following. And obviously, when you're trying to feed your family, it's kind of got to be a balance of both. But there is no checks and balances system. It's not like strength and conditioning where you have to go through certifications. Anybody can start a social media account and be an elite skills trainer. And for me personally, I'm not sure that's a good thing, since there is no certification or checks and balances to get to that.
Got it. Okay. So this is a retweet. When you have a scouting service and you just go see the top 100 kids in the country, you are not helping anyone.
Yeah, I think with that tweet in particular, very similar to skill training, because of social media, and obviously social media is a tremendous resource. It's very easy to get caught up with as a scouting service, and through Driven, we do some exposure events where the focus is on those top 100 players. But I know some of the top 100 guys that I have, whether they go to an exposure event or not, it's not going to impact their recruiting. And I think there are some recruiting services that I have relationships with here in Virginia that do a phenomenal job of kind of trying to seek out and help those guys who other people haven't heard about. And again, kind of in that servant leadership, I have a tremendous respect for those guys who don't have to be around the top 100 guys to feel like they're really helping players. And I think that it's easy to be around those top 100 guys and, take pictures and tweet it, but it's not like that's, if you're a top 100 kid or a top 10 kid, John Calipari isn't looking at these scouting reports that are put out on Twitter by small scouting services. At the same time, those small scouting services can go to maybe a lesser known area and find an under recruited kid and can really help that kid. But it all goes back to kind of the servant leadership that we've hit on so much, and serving the players as opposed to serving ourselves.
Don't let a 140 character tweet cost you a $140,000 scholarship.
I think the first time I ever saw that, I think it was Five Star may have tweeted it several years ago. And as the tweet says, your social media is part of your brand, and with personal branding being such a big thing with high school players going to the college level, your social media is out there, and you kind of see it all the time. Or there was a Duke football coach that has a tweet that's gone viral a couple of times where they kind of crossed somebody off their recruiting board because the player was tweeting inappropriate things. You can very quickly cost yourself your future if you're worried about, or not if you're worried about, if you're tweeting inappropriate things. And those 140 characters, though they may not seem like a lot, can be very powerful.
If we ask players to accept the grind and do the dirty work, we must do the same as coaches. Sweep floors, fill bottles. No job is too small.
And so absolutely. I think no job is too small, as simple as that sounds. I was speaking with a coach from Toronto a couple years ago, and he had went to a coaching clinic a couple weeks before in Chicago when Tim Grover had the Attack Athletics facility. And he had said that he went to the coaching clinic, and then that night he went back to the facility just hoping that he was going to catch Grover in, one-on-one where he could speak to him and ask him some more questions. And Grover was there with a broom sweeping the floor, and he spent some time talking with him. And Grover said, this is my facility. No job is too small. I sweep the floors. I'd have to clean toilets. I have to do everything. And that's the Tim Grover, who everybody knows, Jordan, D. Wade, Kobe. And if he's the epitome of a trainer who's worked with the absolute highest level players, I think it's important for us as players and coaches to realize that if we're trying to serve these kids, if we're trying to serve our team, whatever the goal is, that means that, hey, maybe we have to give a motivational speech in the locker room, or I've got to really prepare for a session with a high level player who's going to be in, for a week this summer preparing to go to college. At the same time, it may mean sweeping the floor before the workout to make sure that there's not dust and it's ready to go. And we have to be prepared to do any job, regardless of how glamorous or how seemingly insignificant it may be.
I hope that shot down some misconceptions about Mr. Grover too, because you can read his book and listen to his attitude, his mindset, and get the wrong idea about him. So I didn't know that myself. That's really interesting.
Yeah, when I heard it, I was just like, that's awesome. And it makes total sense because he just cared so much about his athletes that everything was going to be perfect and taken care of. Even though there may be some misconceptions after you read Relentless and see some of the tweets and things like that.
Right. Cooler. Got to be a cleaner.
That's right.
So about Gordon Hayward, 2008, 3 stars, no ranking. 2017, 9 years later, 4 years, $128 million. You define you.
Yeah, I've tried to be big on that pretty much the last 3 years. The first year that the Warriors won it and Curry was MVP, I went back and found, his rivals page or whatever that was tremendously unimpressive compared to a lot of high major, highly touted players. And I've had several tweets throughout kind of tweeting things like that say you define you. One was with CJ McCollum when I think he played varsity as a freshman, all at like 5'2", and the picture makes it look like he weighed like 120 pounds. I think it's very easy. It's very easy for players, even once they've gotten to high school, to think, well, man, this is my goal. This is my dream. I want to play college basketball. But all these other guys they're already getting recruited. They're already getting offers. Or even guys who are later in their high school career in college who think, maybe playing professionally isn't going to pan out. Granted, those situations are the anomalies. They are the small percentage. But I think it's good for players to keep in mind and coaches to keep in perspective and working with those players that, hey, these players truly do define themselves, and we can't decide when they're an 8th grader or a 9th grader what their future is going to look like. It's our goal to support what their goals are. And obviously you have to be a little bit realistic. If you've got a 5'7" third or 5'7" eighth grader who wants to be a 7-foot center. Like there has to be some type of realistic culture there. But at the same time, you look at these guys and hey, you never know what can happen. If you truly commit yourself to the process, then let that take you as far as it can. And then as opposed to defining who they are when they're young, let's let the end of that process determine. And who knows? Look at Steph or CJ McCollum or Kawhi or all these guys who were under recruited or maybe small when they were younger. Look at some of these stories and you never know where you might end up.
So probably a good segue. Rather than claiming and taking credit for their success, let the NBA draft be about these kids whose lives changed forever last night.
I think for me, this is one of just kind of a pet peeve of mine. It's funny when guys when they sign their letter of intent or they get drafted. It's funny how many guys come out of the woodwork and have ties to players. Shout out to such and such alum who attended our event and was there for an hour, and then kids who go to an event and basically get their picture taken and that's it. But then they're an alum and organizations want to claim them as if they tremendously impacted those individuals. And I think regardless of your impact, just make it about the kids. Let's let them have their night, have their moment. You don't have to claim them as yours. You don't have to say alum. Just congratulate the kid and genuinely be excited for what they've accomplished. And if you did impact them to the extent that you were really a part of their journey, then they're going to thank you and they're going to message you, and that should be all you need. It doesn't matter, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter who knows about it. It doesn't matter who sees it. If you impacted them, that should be all that matters. I think a lot of guys who do player development and have a lot of NBA guys, you see a lot of them do a great job, in my opinion, in that they don't continually credit themselves. They let the players' work speak for itself. They support them. They're there for them. They provide the service that we're here to provide, but it can't become about us when our job is to serve others.
That's interesting because you don't know about many of these NBA skills trainers. A lot of them you don't know about because
Right.
they're so low key, and you may see an article here or there. But I mean, why is that?
I think, in my opinion, some guys really just spend time in the gym with players, and other guys spend time and then also develop or build a brand or build their business. In my opinion, both are great. And if you're if you're serving the players, and that's what it's all about. But like you said, there's some guys who you don't really hear about a ton, or you don't know about, and then maybe an article shows up or a video goes viral, and all of a sudden they're everywhere. That doesn't mean that once they've gone viral, they're suddenly a better trainer than they were 3 years ago when they were doing the exact same thing. It just means now more people know about it. And in my opinion, if you are doing great work and you're doing it for the right reasons, then everybody will have their moment where people see how good of a job you're doing. Like you said, there are a lot of guys who have a ton of NBA guys or whatever, and people just don't know about it. And in my opinion and in my experience, most of those guys are completely fine with that.
It's not the quantity of the following, but the quality of the impact that determines the effectiveness of one's leadership.
For me, the message that you're providing and truly investing in those players, I know I've kind of used that phrase a lot, that determines your impact. It's very easy, especially with social media now, to have a huge following, but your impact only goes as far as what your message is and how genuine you are with that. And that's not speaking to anybody individually. I just think it's very important, especially for, say you're a coach that doesn't have very many followers, or, you're a trainer who doesn't have very many followers. Hey, the kids that you're impacting, you're impacting them just as much as somebody who has a million followers. It's about who you're with, the message you're giving them, how you're impacting it, or, how you're impacting them. And I'm a firm believer that regardless of who you are, how big your following is, you can never impact an individual with just a following with social media the way that you can in person and in the gym. And there may be a trainer who doesn't even have social media, and one of their clients follows somebody who has millions of followers. Well, that social media following, or the one that has the following, they're not going to impact that kid nearly as much as the trainer is, who's in there with them every day, sweating, investing all of themselves. And again, it's the quality of that impact. The quality of that impact is determined by that message and that investment in the player, not by the quantity of the following.
Get to the gym early to stretch, not to selfie.
Actually tweeted that and took a picture of it and sent it to one of my players, who spends an insufferable amount of time taking selfies before they work out. It is what it is. Personal brand is everything, is big now. That's the culture we live in, where you take selfies, you tweet about workouts. Players do it. We all do it. At the same time, you can't let that be your focus. Players have to understand, if this particular player is very high level, players have to understand, hey, when you get to the gym, you're there to work, and it shouldn't be, oh, well, here's a selfie before my workout, and then I'm taking a water break, and I'm going to take a picture of myself sweating. If you're thinking so much about your brand and your social media that mid-workout you're stopping to take picture or take selfies or whatnot, you're probably not as dedicated as you should be to get into the next level. So am I saying, in my opinion, is it bad that players are doing that? No, it's the culture that we're in now. But at the same time, if you're going to work out, your workout should be the primary focus, not your selfie stick.
And I've changed my mindset about this too after hearing you and Jordan Lawley talk about it. Just the phones out during the workout sessions and recording. And I've converted. I used to be the one, no, I need to have my phone out recording the kid doing the workout. That's how I built my business. But then I thought about it, you don't have your phone out on the job in corporate. So
Right.
why on the court when you're really fully invested in the kid?
Right. And with me, I mean, I'm fortunate because my brother does video stuff. So it's very easy to get him over to video, workouts and things like that. But at the same time, I'm a professional. He's a professional. He's paid when he comes. And my mentality is kind of, hey, if as skill trainers, we see ourselves as professionals, then let's have professionals do the other aspects to help us grow our business. And that may mean, some guys, their business may not be to the point where they can afford to pay guys, and that's fine. But hey, reach out to the local college and see if they have somebody who would want to intern, who's in their film department, or if there's somebody who who videos, who has a kid, like, hey, I'll give your, work out with your kid a few times. And it's all a hustle, but at the same time, like, I think it's important to be a professional. Like you said, you wouldn't show up to a job site and be on your phone. So let's treat workouts the same way.
Right, that's a good point. And I've recently given kids free training who can just hold a phone for me and just record stuff on Snapchat. So I mean, you were definitely somebody who influenced my mindset on that. So thanks for that. Next tweet: compensation shouldn't determine the level of dedication. Either pursue excellence or accept mediocrity.
Yeah, I think I don't know, Michael Lancaster talks a lot about, like, if you accept mediocrity in any aspect of your life, it's going to infiltrate into all aspects. It's very easy. And I've heard trainers say, like, oh, this isn't a high paying session, or I won't make much on this camp, or, things along those lines. And in my opinion, it shouldn't matter, because 95% of the time, it's not the kids who are paying, it's the parents. And you can't fault the children because of the sins of their parents. Not that not paying is a sin by any means, but just saying, if you got 10 kids in the gym, whether you're making a ton of money or very little money, those kids still, and they deserve a total investment, and they deserve, the best product that you can provide for them. In my opinion, it shouldn't be a thing where, oh, hey, this is a high paying event, so I'm going to come in and give all of my everything. And this is a low paying event, so I'm going to just come in and kind of, go half speed through things. If you're doing your job, you should want to do a good job, regardless of what the compensation is. And if compensation leads you to feel like you don't need to give it your all, then don't do that event, or don't do that training session. But never sacrifice kids, or even if it's high level players, never sacrifice players at any age because you feel like compensation isn't what it should be. If you're on the court with them, then you made a decision that it did make enough sense for you to be on the court. And so if you're on there, then give them all you've got.
I'm going to read these two together. If you're a skill development guy, what's your number one focus? Your brand or your players' games? And a common training marketing pitch is getting kids to the next level. A better one may be to first have them excel at their current one. And you kind of already covered on one, but whatever you want to elaborate on is fine.
Right. I think we kind of touched on it a little bit. Obviously, as trainers, if we're doing this full time, developing a business and developing a brand is crucial, because if you don't develop a business and you don't have some type of a strategy as to why you're doing what you're doing when you're doing it, then it's going to be very easy to fizzle out. And it's not going to be sustainable, and you're not going to be able to support yourself. And if you have a family, yourself and your family. But at the same time, and kind of going back to the video thing, it can become so easy to only focus on the brand that you can forget about players. And I think it's very easy. I know I made this mistake, and I still probably make this mistake. Not that I have it all figured out. When I was younger, if I was going to have workouts film, and I would, spend the day or several hours beforehand making sure that everything was lined up video wise, that the cameras were where they needed to be, and that the cameraman knew what I wanted filming. And I didn't dedicate nearly as much time that day as I should have to the actual players. And so I think it's finding that balance where the players you have to be dedicated to those players. You have to make sure that you have a game plan for them. You're attacking whatever your focus is for that day. You're progressing workout to workout, week to week, while at the same time still building that brand. But you can't focus on your business and your brand while you're working with your players. And a lot of that is there are obviously different philosophies and carving out time, how guys like to do, how they like to break up their day to work on different things. But again, the big thing for me is that it goes back to, hey, when you're in the gym, your focus needs to be on those players who you're with, serving them and helping them get to whatever their goal may be. And like you said, we kind of touched on it a little bit ago. Next level may mean this kid needs to learn how to make a left-handed layup, or it may be this is a mid-major kid and we've got a summer or a year to turn them into a high major kid. But they have to be great at what they currently are before you can even consider what the next level may be. Mike Krzyzewski's big on milestones as opposed to goals, and they go into the year. The day one goal can't be to win a national championship, because they first need to win the Maui Invitational or the ACC or whatever. And that's kind of the big thing with the players and being great at where they currently are. If this player doesn't have a scholarship and we want them in 2 years from now to have scholarship offers, well, they're not going to get a scholarship offer tomorrow. So let's find what they're good at, make them great at that, and then concern ourselves with that end goal where again, kind of like the tweet said, let's excel at our current before we even focus on getting to the next.
One move on air before going unimpeded 20 inches in dunking is as unrealistic as repping one move 10 times on a cone before attacking. Am I wrong?
So obviously there are huge debates daily amongst, the biggest name guys in the industry as far as innovation and what works and what doesn't. And some guys say you should never use a cone or two basketballs. Some guys say that, those are essential. There's so many different philosophies. My thing is, hey, when we're training and we are working on the technical aspects of players' game, if we're trying to add a step back, or, like the in and out cross that you had on Instagram a couple months ago, let's say we're trying to add that to a player's game. If they rep that out on a cone 10 times, or if they do it with no cone, no chair, just on air once, and they come back and do that 10 times through, neither of those is more game realistic than the other. But if a player commits to either of those methods, they're going to get better, and they're going to be working to perfect that move. My big thing is, let's step back and kind of realize that if we are always doing things that are game realistic, we're probably not necessarily adding things to a player's game, because they have to be able to do it slow before they can do it fast. They have to be able to do it at full game speed before they can do it in small-sided games where they have to make decisions. And if they can't do it there, then they can't do it in a game. So I think regardless of whether you're in favor of innovation and using training tools or not, I think it's a misnomer to think that everything has to be game-like, because if everything is completely and totally game-like, then how do you add those new technical aspects to a player's game? And in my opinion, you can't. There's a lot of research, especially from like FIBA and in Europe, about skill acquisition and ages that skills can be acquired and things along those lines. And a big focal point is always you have to develop these skills before you can implement them. And sometimes that may mean we take the basket out of the equation and we're at half court just repping out certain footwork. Is that game-like? No, because you're not going to be standing at half court just repping your footwork out. But at the same time, that can really help develop that for a game. I forget, I think it's the Talent Code, the book. It talks about Peyton Manning and how at the end of his career, he would still take snaps kind of imaginarily and then do 3, 5, and 7-step drops, just working on the footwork. Obviously, Hall of Fame quarterback, one of the greatest of all time. That's not game-like at all. He's never going to just drop back without a football, but he's repping out those movements, those biomechanical movements that are essential to him being successful in his sport. And so then just because it's not game-like doesn't mean that it's not important. So I know I've kind of gotten long-winded, but going back to your question, hey, if you're in favor of innovation, that's great. If you're in favor of one basketball and no cones, chairs, no nothing, that's great. But let's realize that both have their place, both can help players, and that one size doesn't really fit all.
I like it. I like it. So a lot of training secrets and beliefs are built on sales, not stats.
With that, I think I'm trying to think of a good phrase, but secrets sell, hacks sell, new tips sell, because players see, such and such hack to add X amount of points to your game. That's again, a lot of those secrets are rooted in what is going to sell, kind of like I just said, and not so much statistically, hey, we tested X amount of players using this program and they gained this, or we use this shooting method, or this shooting method with X amount of players and their field goal percentages improved by X amount of percentage points. A lot of secrets aren't rooted in that. They're rooted in, hey, I know this will sell to players. And I think Mike Lee may have chimed in, and it's very easy to do that because, again, it does sell. But at the same time, that's not really what's helping players. And let's be good enough and have a product that's so strong that they want to pay for it without having to sell them just, fallacies.
Right. So how have you, or do you, I'm not sure with your engineering background if you're really numbers driven, analytical, but how do you include stats and your results with
Yeah.
play?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm a numbers guy. I like the analytical aspect of the game, but not to the point that they're absolutes. As far as the training, the training side of things, it's so much different than strength and conditioning, where numbers are completely absolute. If your squat numbers increase and your body fat percentages decrease, and you could go on and on, then the program that you're on is, then it's working. There's not really the mental toughness aspect, the decision-making aspect. So I think with skill development, numbers can be a little bit misleading, because you can have a player who you work on their shot all summer and say you just charted their shots. Hey, they become a better shooter through all your summer months, and they get to the season and they're shooting the same as they were the year before, because there is that decision-making aspect, and you have to make shots with, maybe fans behind you screaming in your ear. And so I'm big on statistics. I like them. I think they can tell the whole story, but I think it's also very easy for statistics to be kind of manipulated to benefit whatever your end goal may be. I don't think I've ever seen a trainer say, hey, I worked with a player and look, their numbers went down. It's always these numbers went up. Their field goal percentages went up, or whatever. You're going to kind of promote what's the most positive. I think as trainers, speaking on a very simplistic level, it can help just with confidence and in knowing that players are, technically more capable shooters if you do track some things throughout, say, your summer or your preseason workouts. It may help you find out, hey, they don't shoot they're not shooting very well from the corners. But again, it can't be an absolute, because once it becomes game time, there's just a whole, there's a whole new level there where when the decision making, the fans, the mental aspect, the point in the game, is it a close game, or are you up big, when all those things come into play, it just can't be used as an absolute.
Yeah. So last tweet, having high level players doesn't make you an elite trainer any more than having a garage full of Ferraris makes you a mechanic.
I think with skill training, it is what it is. With skill development, with AAU, it's assumed that if you have high level players, be those high major or NBA, that you're very good at what you do. And that's, I don't believe that to be the case. There are guys who only run youth leagues, ages whatever, 9 to 14, and that's their focus, who are great coaches and really help those players get better, on the court, skill wise, off the court, as leaders, what have you. But the assumption is high level players makes you a high level trainer, and there's nothing that really supports that. There's nothing that supports that other than the fact that with social media, it's easier to promote high level players than it is middle schoolers who, their end goal may be to make the varsity team one day. I think it's important for all of us to remember that we can learn something from everyone. We can watch a middle school practice and we may learn more from that than we do from a high level NBA skills trainer who's working with a potential NBA all-star. But if you're getting players better, you're building that relationship, they're getting better on the court, their skills are developing, their numbers are increasing, they have increased or more significant roles with their team, regardless of what age those players are, regardless of how highly touted they may be. Guys who are doing that with their kids are great coaches and great trainers, regardless of who knows about it or who sees it or how high level their kids may be.
I like it. So is there anything else? That was the last tweet. Is there anything else that you think needs to be said to anyone listening?
No, I think with me, like what as kind of a lot of these tweets kind of said, just trying to always keep in mind what we're in it for, and why we do this as servant leaders. In player development, we all work with players of different ages, of different age ranges. Everybody's businesses are in different places. You have guys who are just getting started. You have guys who've been doing it for years. You have some who work with just young players, some who only work with pros. We kind of always keeping in mind that we are here to serve players, and they always deserve our total investment, regardless of who sees it, regardless of who knows about it. If we do that, you fight the good fight, then, kind of like the one tweet said, regardless of what the end result on the basketball court may be, those are all going to be success stories. And that's kind of what it's all about, is, us being a stepping stone for others to get closer to where they want to be.
Coach, I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you for coming on the podcast again.
Absolutely, man. It was fun. I'd forgotten about some of those tweets. So
Well, you put on the spot. It was like 5 minutes before, and I told you what I wanted to talk about, and you crushed it.
Oh, good. Hopefully, it was fun. Hopefully there was some value in there somewhere. And again, I appreciate you having me on and doing the podcast. I was listening to some of them the other day when you posted Hernando's. You're doing a great thing for the basketball community and helping out a lot of coaches, trainers, and players across the board.